Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to YALSA's webinar, CreateTech, Take It and Make It Big, Leveraging Partnerships for Teen Tech Week. My name is Nicole Gibby Mungia, and I'm the Program Officer for Continuing Education for YALSA. I'd like to go over a few features of our webinar software before we get started. We'll be communicating with each other today via chat. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have during the course of the presentation via the chat box. If you would prefer to not see the chat box during the course of the webinar, you may click on the full screen button, which is located on the upper right-hand side of your screen, and that will eliminate the chat and attendee list boxes. To undo the full screen option, you just click on that same button again. On the upper left-hand side of your screen, or in the middle, you should see an image of a person with their hand raised. And if you click on the arrow next to the image of the person, you'll see that you have a variety of options, which include raising your hand, laughing, applauding, agreeing, and disagreeing. If at any point during the webinar you experience audio issues, please type into the chat box to let me know, and I'll work with you to resolve them. Following this presentation, you will receive a copy of the slides from the PowerPoint as well as the recording. If you'd like to receive a certificate of participation, please contact me following the webinar via email, and I'm happy to send that along to you. Our presenters for today's webinar are Peter Kirschman, Marika Stelak, Patricia Harris, and on chat we will have Andrea Wood. So Peter and Marika, please take it away.
All right.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Marika Stelak. I'm with the St. Paul Public Library. I'm the Youth Services Coordinator here. And I will let Peter introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Peter Kirschman. I'm currently a master's student at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, but for the last 5 years I've been working as a youth crew manager at the Science Museum of Minnesota. And so Marika and I are going to be talking today a little bit about CreateTech, which was a series of workshops and a sort of a drop-in creative technology program for teens that started as a partnership between St. Paul Public Library and the Science Museum. And so I'm going to say a little bit about the Science Museum and the crew of teens I was working with, and then hand it back to Marika. I worked in the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center at the Science Museum of Minnesota with a crew of 9 high schoolers who were paid to work on creative technology and digital justice work. And there's a number of crews at the Youth Science Center that each have different STEM content areas. And our work was to partner with the St. Paul Public Library to lead these workshops. And we started in the winter of 2012, and we led a number of creative technology workshops sort of sporadically throughout the spring, using Scratch and a number of different tools. And then going into the summer of 2012, we led these CreateTech workshops weekly in 3 different library sites around St. Paul. And then going into the school year, since teens were teaching these workshops, they were no longer available to teach us regularly. And that's sort of when some of the shifts that we're going to talk about in CreateTech started today. So I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks. All right. So at about the same time, the St. Paul Public Library and the St. Paul Parks and Recreation received an IMLS grant where we were able to really explore what learning labs were going to be. So we've got an 18-month planning grant where we just planned a learning lab, and that learning lab was going to be a physical space that is going to be opening very soon, a virtual space, and then a mobile lab. And part of this mobile lab, when we started researching it, was that we wanted to have teens have access to technology outside of the school day that they couldn't necessarily have access from home. And they couldn't have access during the school day to do projects that they wanted to do on their own. It was very similar to what we were doing already with the Science Museum and the Teen Tech crew. And so what we decided is to just kind of put it all together into one program and call it CreateTech. And so the Science Museum teens made the name CreateTech. But then we started growing. Other organizations wanted to start partnering with us. The SPNN, which is the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, which is a computer a cable station in our neighborhood wanted to partner with us. And so that's when the CreateTech name really took on its shape. Is I turned to Peter and I said, okay, the St. Paul Library wants to partner now with somebody that's not the Science Museum. Do you mind if we continue calling it CreateTech, even though it's not going to be involving your teens anymore? And that's when he said, take it and make it big. And it's really kind of defined what CreateTech is now. We have started partnering with, like I said, St. Paul Parks and Rec, the libraries, Science Museum, SPNN, and we are continuing to bring on additional partners as we grow. And so what we did is realize that we didn't want to grow and become something that wasn't part of our vision. So we came up, as a partnership, we came up with 8 elements of what a successful partnership would look like. And so we want to share those 8 elements of what makes a CreateTech session a CreateTech. So you could know if you wanted to start your own where you are. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we're going to go through these one by one, but feel free to chat in questions if you have any as we go along, because we can make this very informal if you'd like. So Peter's going to go ahead and tell you about the first of the 8 elements that define CreateTech.
Yeah, great. And I think I'm probably going to say this more than once, but I think one of the best parts about this partnership is that we always have these monthly meetings where individuals from all of the different partner organizations get together and have a chance so that the library staff and partner staff are sitting down and talking about how things are going and sort of comparing notes. So these 8 things actually came out of discussions among staff members from across all of the different sites. But the first was really to create an exclusive and persistent space for teens. And so we started that first spring sort of scheduling sort of whenever the teens were available to have workshops in a room, and then transitioned in that summer to having the weekly workshops. And we realized how important it was that they knew that if they went to Rondo Library on Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. or whatever it is, it didn't have to do with having a lot of money or like these big programming, but it was that consistency of like, this will be a space, it's just for teens. And so you could see the tweens hanging out outside the window, like waving. But this was really a space that was persistent and just for those 12 to 18-year-olds is how we define teens for the program. And just even if even on some days when it was just like a group of iPads and a supportive staff member, it was there and it was persistent. So we'll go on to the second one.
All right. Another key element is that we realized really early on that the mentorships are what drives what CreateTech is. It is not necessarily about the stuff that you have, and I think that's a place where we got hung up. As the St. Paul Public Library, we were like, we don't have a lot of money for technology. We don't have a lot of space. We don't have a lot of that kind of thing. So when we started with this IMLS planning grant, thinking about what a learning lab would look like, we went to Chicago to see the U Media space in Chicago to just kind of get a feel for what a learning lab would look like. And we had the opportunity to talk to a panel of teens, and we asked them, what is it that we should take away? And I was ready to make a shopping list right there. They have, just thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and I was expecting them to say, you really need to have a mixing board and a suite of software and all this stuff. And not one of them mentioned technology, and all of them mentioned the people. They all said that it is the staff that really makes it a place where they want to be, a place where they feel like they belong, a place where they feel safe. And so it was really, it was a 180 for us. We really changed our direction of what we were focusing on and started focusing a lot more on staff development and on building a really good core of youth workers as librarians who understand youth. We decided that was much more important than trying to focus a lot of our funds on stuff. So that was a key element to CreateTech.
And we really lucked out with incorporating the teen voice. So we already had Teen Tech Crew, this crew of 9 teens who were largely from the neighborhoods that the library workshops were happening in, who were sort of guiding the direction. And here you can see we have sort of intense weekend-long retreats throughout the process. And this is, in the photo here, it's the Teen Tech crew were brainstorming everything that they had done in their first year. But even finding ways to talk, like coming along with that persistent space, you end up getting persistent youth, because it's not youth who are necessarily putting it on their calendar, who have parents who are driving them to the library to come. In our situation, it was a lot of like the same 5 or 6 or like whatever that core of teens are, and then other folks who are in the library. And so asking those 5 teens who are there every week, like, what do you want to see and what sort of activities would be good? And we'll come back to this later with the trusted teens, but it's really like asking them what they want it to look like.
All right, and for this next slide, I'm going to try a poll. So we're going to talk about Homago, which is hanging out, messing around, and geeking out. And I just want to know, have you heard of Homago before? Now, I think I can open this poll. There we go. On your screen. Please vote. It's so exciting. I love seeing this work. Okay, not a lot. That's excellent. This is helpful. All right, thank you. That's a really good, this is really helpful. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you for helping me out with that. Okay, so Homago is research done by Mimi Ito. She is a researcher based, funded from MacArthur. She did research on how teens engage with technology, and I'm just going to briefly go over it, but she's very interesting to look into if you're thinking about doing anything around technology and teenagers. But her concept of Homago is, in Homago, I'm going to say it like it's a word, but it's just the acronym of hanging out, messing around, and geeking out. So it really changed how we looked at how teens would engage with technology in our space. Basically, in a nutshell, she's basically saying that you can't expect kids to be able to walk into a classroom and start geeking out with technology, geeking out being the most intense level of being with technology. And that was part of our problem with our original way we set up with the Teen Tech crew, is that they would bring in these really cool hands-on experiments about, let's say, circuitry, and they'd say, and I, as a library staff, I'd be going up to the teens and saying, hey, do you want to go and see this thing about circuits? And they would hear circuits, and they'd be so freaked out, and they were like, no, I don't know how to do circuitry. Well, when we were reading Mimi Ito's research and meeting her in Chicago, she basically said you need to give the kids a really safe way to hang out with technology first. And hanging out with technology is the fundamental basics, letting them be on Facebook, letting them touch an iPad, let them be on GarageBand and just kind of look at it and be with what they're comfortable with. It's kind of like the pre-literacy for digital literacy. And then you can offer chances to mess around, and that's when you put out things like a mixing board or a video camera, and just like let them mess around with it. Literally, just let them get their hands on it, but don't try to teach them about it quite yet. And then the geeking out is when you do start trying to use their interest after they kind of get comfortable with it to geeking out. So that's Homago in a nutshell, is that just now knowing that the kids aren't going to be comfortable walking in and starting a technology program right away cold. So one of the things that we needed to kind of change in the brains of the library staff, well, and all staff that were doing programming for teens, is that hanging out with technology is okay. That them coming in and being with an iPad and being on their Facebook is actually a program, because a lot of times tech teens are, they don't want to go in and do something that's really structured right away. So you're basically creating that safe space. But what happened is the library staff would look at that and think, oh, they're not being productive enough. And so it's really important to encourage that hanging out. Peter, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say on top of that, adding that, just that even if they're hanging out, like they're doing multiple things. So it's not even necessarily a progression from hanging out to messing around, but really it's like they're on their phone chatting with friends, playing music and texting, but they're also making things and they're also exploring with the technology at the same time. And there's a link in the resources at the end of this presentation to a Homago handbook. And you should check it out if you're not familiar with Homago, because it's written from a practitioner standpoint and really, I think, explains and explores it really well.
So the last thing I want to say about hanging out is that I actually used this to my benefit when we were purchasing some beanbag chairs. We were basically, all we did is turn some meeting room spaces in our libraries into teen hangouts. So you don't need to have dedicated spaces for teens already, pre-established. We use the same rooms that we use for story times. And so we wanted to make it look a little bit more teen friendly. So we put on music and we use, Pandora or whatever to get some music playing. And then we realized we should probably have some seating that's not, meeting room seating. So we got some beanbag chairs with some programming money. And I got some pushback saying, beanbags are not, that's not a program. That's a beanbag. But I pulled out Mimi Ito's research saying, we are creating a program based around, hanging out with technology, and we need these beanbag chairs for the programming, and I was able to use that funding for it. So just know that you can use this to kind of leverage the fact that teens need that space to hang out. It's really important for programming. So I'll move on, let Peter talk about the messing around and geeking out.
I think this really ties back to the partnerships, and we don't have to talk much more about it, but just this was the opportunity to bring in different partners. So St. Paul Neighborhood Network, who's the community television station, has this expertise in animation and video production. And so when they're in the space once a month or once a week with video cameras and with the iPad, so you see an iPad with some stop motion animation happening on it, that persistence gives them a chance to dive deeper. And another benefit to those partnerships are that even if in your 2-hour workshop that's happening, that's more of a drop-in or sort of like an exploratory area, if a team gets really into that video production or into that computer programming, because you have these partnerships, you can say, go take this computer programming class at the Science Museum, or there's a team-produced television show at SPNN, and you can sign up and do this twice a week for free. And so like using those partnerships to encourage participants to get to that geeking out level and sort of making and creating.
Great. And trust the teens is a pretty obvious one. It's just really important to trust the teens. So I want to read a quote from somebody who's running one of the technology programs at the Parks and Rec Center. He's a library staff. And he was talking about handing over the technology. And he said, I would estimate that at least 35 people interacted with the iPads. And this was during one of our after-school sessions. And we only had 5 iPads, I should mention, so we don't have a ton. When I brought the iPads to the teen zone, which is the Parks and Rec space, before I was kind of paranoid and strove to keep the use all in one room. The teen zone staff had no such qualms, and last night the iPads were in use all over the facility. Clearly my concern was unnecessary. Another example that the teen zone's philosophy of radical trust is effective and inspiring. And so I think it's important to really trust your teens, and you do. I mean, there will be some problems, but I think the teens know when they're being trusted, and they do really respect the fact that you are giving them technology and access that they might not have had already. So.
And I realized I jumped ahead on my last point. So this is really about finding those partnerships. I think CreateTech has really benefited from finding artists and folks in the community who are willing to come in and work and just offer a workshop and share what they do. And really, it's the partnership that has kept it alive, so that the Teen Tech crew is paid through some work readiness, some teen employment money through the City of St. Paul's Park and Recreation Department. And they're trained at the Science Museum, and they're working in the libraries. And so I think that it's just like all of the work that we're all doing, probably, it's all based on partnerships right now and to keep the program going.
And the last one is the staff willingness to adapt and be responsive. I think this is key for any kind of programming, but especially if you're going to try to do something with several organizations. We've been just extremely flexible and willing to learn from each other. One of the key examples of this was when we were running out of space at the libraries. We have a cute little Carnegie library that's just wonderful and it's bursting with activity, but we had a homework center going on in the same room as conversation circles. We had, people trying to study, and then here we are trying to do one more thing on top of that and have these teens come in and hang out with technology and not have to be quiet. And we're like, this isn't going to work in the same space. And one of the Parks and Rec staff said, well, could we try having it in your space, but after you guys close? And my initial response was like, no, we could never do that, but we tried, and it worked fabulously. We now have Library After Dark in 2 libraries where the Parks and Rec staff help us staff it. We have library staff who will come, and we can have 40 just teenagers in an entire space, and they don't have to be shushed, and they're not I guess just having to worry about how the patrons are reacting to them, and they're not worrying about I guess just all the things that teenagers get shushed or get told that they're doing things wrong. They're able to be loud if they need to be. They're also able to do things like create videos and use the whole library and not have to worry about whether they're bothering other patrons, that kind of thing. So that was one example of that. And like Peter said at the very beginning, we do have the monthly meetings for reflection and hashing things out with each other. The staff does. And so that's really important, just because we need to be able to hear problems and problem solve as a group from all the different organizations that are coming together. It's really important. So that is that from us. I would love to hear some questions from you all, and take those now. Feel free to type them into the chat box if you haven't already. I'm seeing somebody else does Library After Dark, which is great. Great opportunity to get the teens involved and let them be noisy. Any other questions? I see people typing. I'm just going to give a second for people to type. I know.
The suspense is killing.
I know. Peter, so the first question I see is they'd like to hear more about how we created the first partnerships in the community.
And I think I can talk a little. So Teen Tech Crew came out of a program that was actually a partnership with Minneapolis Public Libraries before that, and I think it really just came out of, I mean, this isn't the best answer, but I think it came out of like personal relationships between the director of St. Paul Public Libraries and one of my supervisors at the Science Museum. I'm not sure if there's a better answer to that. Do you know a better answer than that, Marika?
No, that was, I mean, that's how it started. And the same thing with the Parks and Rec and the libraries. We started small. I mean, it's really, I think that's important to know, is that you can really start really small. The Parks and Rec and libraries had not worked together a lot before we got the IMLS grant to start looking at learning labs together. So it's okay. It's okay to start really small and just say let's try this on this level. And we've. I mean, I guess it's important to know that we've tried a couple of partnerships with other organizations that just didn't work as well as it has with the Science Museum, and a lot of it is personal relationships, and it takes time. But I'm trying to think of other things. So
I think just overlapping missions, like you said, Marika, at the beginning about how Teen Tech Crew and the library were already doing this thing that the IMLS grant and the Learning Lab was trying to do, so it just made sense for that partnership to happen. And I know I also used to work at SPNN, the community TV station, and we were always looking for ways to pull people into our more regular programs. So having that place in the community with a regular audience serves SPNN's purposes to pull in programs for their longer term programs, as well as providing sort of this programming in the community already.
Yep. The last thing I'll say to it is make sure that you're partnering with somebody who has equal enthusiasm to you, because it's really hard when you're like the one bringing all the energy and saying, hey, let's do this, and if they're not on board, then it is really difficult. So make sure that you can find, I mean, there are people out in the community that are interested in connecting to teens. It's not always nonprofits, sometimes it's a for-profit group that is just wanting to find some mentorships for their staff, that kind of thing too. So
I saw a question about non-teens using the space, and I think that this is one of the things that we talked about more regularly than almost any other. And I think that's really dependent from site to site, so that the Carnegie Library that Marika mentioned earlier just like there's more younger kids in the neighborhood, and so we were, the site people there were a little more flexible on who could come in. But in some libraries, like at Rondo that I mentioned earlier, I feel like there were teens there, and we used to be more flexible. And then when the teens would show up and it was full of 9-year-olds, they would like look in the room and bounce. And so we, at that site, like it was like a strong line that we drew, and it was 12 years old, and Tayo, the librarian there, knew who was telling the truth and who was, like how old the kids were. And I think it meant like having a couple of Thursdays where there were only a couple of kids there until word got out and sort of it built. But I think that sticking to that 12 to 18 really helped with the success of actually serving a teen population, which was really important, I think, to what we were going for.
Yes, it's very true. We're going to have a 24-hour, like it's always going to be a Teen Tech Center, 7 days a week, learning lab in our new space. It has not yet opened up, and this is something we're talking about a lot because we know that not only are we going to have the younger kids, but we're going to have adults trying to come in as well. And I see somebody else asking about adults. And I think what we're going to try to do is while the kids are in school, giving them, a window of time to use it. Another way I've heard of people using adults is saying that, our new space is going to have like a recording studio, a sound studio, and sewing equipment and that kind of thing, and saying that you can earn time as an adult to use the space if you volunteer as a mentor. And I'm not quite sure how that will work out, but that's one of the kind of concepts that we're looking at is if the adults want to be in the space, then they have to be a mentor to the teens. And if they don't work out that way, then they're not welcome in the space. So we're going to see how that works out, but we're going to try it that way. Next question. In my library system, we have, oh, yes. So the question is about the staff being afraid about being an expert on the technology. That's definitely a problem in the libraries, especially, I think, because we see ourselves as, library, we don't see ourselves as technology experts by any means. I think the thing that's helped us the most is that we didn't have a lot of technology to start. All we had were 5 iPads and and a MacBook. Right. And so it was really easy to feel like you could handle that because it wasn't a lot of stuff. But then as things have been added on, we've been trying to do kind of peer-on-peer trainings. So instead of doing like scary, big-time trainings, we're doing a lot of, we'll have somebody from the Science Museum come over and just show us how to use we just recently purchased some Cameo silhouette vinyl cutters that can like make, stickers and that kind of thing. And somebody from the Science Museum came over and just helped our staff learn how to use it. And we're just keeping it really informal and trying to keep it really like we're not expecting anyone to be experts. The teens aren't expecting anyone to be experts. And we're also keeping the same staff in there every week so that it's not a rotating thing where, it's the same staff, so they become very familiar with it, and they can troubleshoot with the teens. And just emphasizing that it's okay. You don't have to know everything before you start, because otherwise you'll never start.
I'm not sure if we missed any, but maybe should we pass it over to the folks from Best Buy, and then I think there'll be time at the end to come back and catch any?
Sure. There's one question that we missed. Do you want to get to that at the end?
What's the question? I'm having trouble with the chat window.
Oh, sorry. It says, have you used partnerships to put on more structured programs such as teaching the teens programming, web design, etc.? Have all structured programs failed? Peter can talk to the structured programs that have not failed, but in the libraries, we have a really hard time getting structured programs to get any kind of attendance from the teens, just because the teens I don't know why, but they don't tend to show up as regularly. But I know, well, I think you should talk a little bit about the Teen Tech Crew, and then we should pass it on.
Yeah, I think when Teen Tech Crew first started out, we tried to have more scheduled and structured programs, and it just didn't work, and I think there's a variety of reasons. I think that sort of goes back to that sort of passing off participants for the messing around to geeking out, at least at that level. So like finding those partnerships, because there are a bunch of youth-serving organizations like the Science Museum. We ended up hiring some participants from CreateTech or like youth who we got to know through that to work at the Science Museum and in our more structured program, but we haven't had any, I can't think of examples of us having a lot of success having those more structured or deep dives within our CreateTech sort of drop-in spaces.
And we are planning on having more structured in our learning lab space, because we will have 7 days a week, and we will be a space where teens will be dropping in more regularly, we're assuming. And so we're going to be trying to start with more structure at that point. So I'll know more in a couple months.
Dedicated lab, I bet it'll be more successful.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to move on to, I'm going to let the Best Buy folks talk in a moment. We'll have time for questions at the end, so please don't forget those questions. Keep them coming. And I am going to go on to let Patricia talk from Best Buy. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Patricia from Best Buy. I just want to pause we also have my partners on the line, too. I just want to make sure you can hear her, but we're both from Best Buy, and we're going to speak about Best Buy's commitment to teens and how we show up in our communities. Andrea, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound perfect.
Perfect. We had a few audio issues before this, so I'm glad you can hear me. So I'm just going to go through and talk a little bit about our overall commitment to teens and what we're doing in this space, and then Patricia's going to talk specifically about Geek Squad Academy, and we will leave some time at the end for questions for everybody, for any of the hosts, Patricia or me as well, if that works. And sound check, is that still okay, everyone? Patricia, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. Perfect. So onto the slide around Best Buy. So hopefully that's up on everybody's screen now, if I've got control of the controls here. To talk a little bit about what we focus on, we're really doing a lot of work in this space around helping teens explore their passions in technology with the goal of inspiring future education and career choices. So it's really not about, as all of you I'm sure are committed to, not providing just access to technology, but getting teens excited and interested in what technology can do for them. So as part of that, we fund and support programs that provide teens with the latest access to technology, from software to hardware, and try to offer experiences for teens to explore their personal passions around technology, all with the goal of developing 21st century skills for future careers in education. So, we have just this year developed a partnership with YALSA and are working more and more with library tech programs throughout the country. So we're excited to be able to talk about this today. Moving on to the next slide. So part of the work that we've done over the past year has been to build 4 Best Buy Teen Tech Centers. And these are centers that are hosted in nonprofit organizations, or in the case of Minneapolis, we are actually in the downtown Central Library location. Basically, these are places where it's similar to, I think, some of the work that other libraries are doing. It's providing state-of-the-art technology for teens to learn about programming and photography, digital making and there's a music studio. So, you know, all sorts of activities that can inspire
We got
work and technology.
we couldn't.
Um,
Hear me
we'll be working over the next year to actually partner
So
with the
people
Boys
are
and Girls
coming in
Club
telling
to
that I'm
expand
great.
the
So
model.
thank
into 4 different markets in Denver, Philadelphia, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. So we are seeing a lot of success from the first year of funding this project, and we look forward to doing more, particularly with the Boys and Girls Club this year, but that could open up to other nonprofits and libraries in fact following years once we learn more about this as we pilot this program. just to talk a little bit more about the one in um, and not nonprofit organization scope of
Okay,
all sorts of technology. So photography.
Go ahead and talk, Patricia.
That I thought I use all the time with the teams is like, I don't know. I found that a lot of the people who are in, a lot of the teams who come to the program have already used the iPads and are willing to like take risks and try things out. So I think don't be afraid of technology is the only thing I'll add from up above.
Cool. All right, so if anyone has questions now for any of us, Peter or myself or Andrea or Patricia? go ahead and chat those in. I know that there's one from earlier that I'll go ahead and answer while people are typing in. Carla wrote that she was, it said that all programs that they've done in the library are structured programs that have failed with STEAM. And you have the brand new young adult area. All I was going to say for that was that sounds very familiar to us. And the two things that I would focus on are making sure that you're focusing on your staff, and making sure that your staff are the ones that are really on board with this. And if you need to move really great staff in there just for programming time, that'd be great. And then having consistent programming. Those are the two.
So we've got a question about how long does the academy run. We do offer year-round programs, like Andrea was mentioning. In March, we're going to be doing Teen Tech Week, and we'll also be doing some. We'll do a partnership with Digital Learning Day coming up next month for Digital Learning Day, and then our actual program that we have specifically for the summer is going to run from the beginning of June to around about the beginning of September. Because we travel nationally, the school districts vary of when the start time and the end times are, but a range of when we start our summer camps to when we end our summer camps are the beginning of June to the end of August. Now, when we host a particular camp at each facility, we can do a one-day workshop, or we can do a two-day workshop. And when we host our two-day workshops, or when we host both of our workshops, because we travel with our own equipment, we would send our equipment out a day earlier. So we would need one added day for what we call a setup day. So I hope that answers your question about how long our academies run.
I saw a question here or not a question, but a comment where that staff need time to hang out and get comfortable with the tech too. And
I'm sorry,
Randy Lynn wrote that. And we've addressed that by doing a tech petting zoo. And the tech petting zoos are where we put out all the technology that we have on a certain area. Like one time we did it with just all e-book readers, and just let the staff have a chance to get their hands on it and ask questions and work on it together. So absolutely don't forget about your staff. About your staff when you're thinking about professional development and developing these programs.
And to answer your question, Catherine, we always, because we work on a proposal system, there's no location that will, you just have to meet certain criteria, and once our application process is open, it'll walk you through what that criteria needs to look like. So we never exclude anyone based off of location. You just have to meet a certain criteria, and if you meet that, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to come to your location.
So just focus on the excited ones and see if they'll buy in and go for it, because it's totally worth it once it starts rolling. about the staff. Staff was our biggest hurdle for sure in the libraries, and I think. And Patricia, there's a question: how much room does the academy need? You want to make sure that they buy in. You also can find some really excited staff. So just focus on the excited ones and see how much room does the academy need. And go for it because it's totally worth it once it starts rolling. Peter, do you want to answer the question about the Teen Tech Squad?
Yeah, so I was just typing something, but I'll say it. The Teen Tech crews are
How much
actually
room
paid
total?
employees of the Science Museum, so they work between 9 and 12 hours a week during the school year.
So we would need enough room for 5
classrooms
classrooms plus an open area because we do an opening ceremony, and then they would need space to also have lunch because the camps run about 6 hours. So we definitely want to be able to give them a break so they're able to eat. But all of those questions about how much room they need is also you can get from our application once it's open on February 1st.
A little bit more about them.
Peter, do you want to answer the question about the... Any other questions for any of us?
Yeah, so So I think if folks have more questions, they should keep typing them in. Rick and I and everybody has put forward some resources that we'll go over. So here you can see links. You can see the main CreateTech page, as well as Marika and I, as well as a researcher from the University of Minnesota, and some of the other partners have just put together an article about our work with CreateTech, and you can see it there, and a bunch of other good articles on the Youth Media Reporter, and then that Hamago guidebook that I mentioned earlier. And I don't know if Patricia, you want to walk through the Best Buy resources that you have here?
Absolutely. It's just the same link that we also had previously in our other slides, and we also put it in the chat box. It's for our community grants process that Andrea mentioned is going to open up in June, and that's how the libraries and any 501c3s can apply for a community grant.
And this is Nicole. We just have a couple of YALSA resources listed there. If you have questions about ways that you can incorporate technology into your programming or teen library services, our Strengthening Teen Services Through Technology curriculum kit is available as either a paper guide or digital guide. And then for 6 weeks, beginning February 3rd, we have Supporting Teen Needs with Technology e-course. So it's only a couple hours a week, and you can proceed through the course at your convenience. So while there are weekly assignments, you can kind of move at your own pace. So registration is open for that as well, and I'm available to answer any questions for any of the YALSA resources listed.
One last thing I'll throw a link in here. I usually show this when I talk about Teen Tech Crew. It's a quick video of the Teen Tech Crew talking about their own work. So it's not just adults talking about, since one of our points was trusting the youth and getting their voice in there. So you can check it out if you want to sort of digitally meet any of the Teen Tech Crew members there on that Vimeo video.
Well, thanks, everyone. I really appreciate getting all these questions. This is the most interactive webinar I've been a part of, so thank you for that. And feel free to contact any of us with questions after the webinar is over.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you all for joining us today. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to send any of us an email. If you have not yet requested a certificate of attendance for this webinar and you would like that, you may email your request to me and we'll get those out to you right away. So thank you again. We hope that you were able to take away some valuable resources and come up with some ideas as to how to create partnerships within your community that'll benefit your